Let me think. It's been a road. It's been a road. I started off as a developer for a lot of years, and then I studied human computer interaction, which led me through the UX world in design and strategy. That's how I landed at Nielsen Norman Group, and I've been at NNG for 8 years. Early on, I was teaching a class called Omnichannel Journeys and Customer Experience, because that was an interest of mine, the cross-channel, longitudinal experience world. And so I taught that class for about 5 years, and it was really focused on the mechanics of what makes a good journey, best practices, guidelines, how to research it, look for opportunities, optimize, improve, etc. And that was great. I taught that class all over the world for years. And the thing that I kept running up against with people that would attend that course was just a lot of frustration, because they get it. They're UX people. They understand the principles and the best practices and the user-centered design aspect of the journey level experience, but they just felt handcuffed. They didn't have the influence to be able to make the changes that they know needed to be made. They don't have, they didn't have the proper structures and channels and buy-in to do any of the stuff that they were uncovering through research. So it was frustrating for people. And so that kind of set me on this course to figure out how to solve this problem, really, and bring it to our audience at NNG. So I've been really kind of 100% dug into researching this problem for the last 4 years now. And I've been writing some reports and articles and things like that. And now we have the course that I teach at NNG. It's really just the culmination of a lot of research, talking to a lot of people, literature review, and all related topics, from CX focused topics to scaling UX to that journey level, and kind of trying to put all the pieces together in something that makes sense for me and that I can bring to our audience. Sure. Yeah, you're definitely right. The background of journey management tends to come from more of the traditional CX world. When I was writing, the definition article for our website, we're a UX company. So we have cut our teeth in web design, interface design, and of course we're broadening our scope and kind of scaling the definition of UX to broader experiences too. So I wanted to kind of define it in a way that was relevant for our audience, our UX audience. So the definition I used is journey management is the ongoing practice of continually researching, measuring, optimizing, and orchestrating the journey level experience to improve, of course, the customer's experience, but also to achieve business results. So it's going to the point about CX, that CX has been around for a while. That practice, that sort of team, it has been in existence in a lot of companies for a while, typically aligned with marketing, or if it's a software as a service organization, they may be called customer success. And the focus typically has been a lot around measurement, more around perception of the brand, really managing how people feel about the brand, focus on marketing and getting people through a sales funnel and keeping them happy. And so a lot of, the literature out there is coming from that space. The way I kind of think about where we are right now in a point of time is that UX has matured over the last 25 years to a point where we are starting to encroach on CX's world a little bit. We're kind of blending together, I think, kind of meeting in the middle there, because we're scaling the scope of experiences we're looking at from a more of a user-centered design, general experience standpoint. So I think what is great is if we can learn a lot about what CX is good at, what they've traditionally been able to wrangle is this long cross-functional way of managing journeys. So we want to borrow what they're good at, that cross-functional way of kind of having a view into all the touch points and being able to collaborate and design. But we want to do that from a more of a user-centered design UX point of view. So that's kind of the approach I take with my class, talking to UX focused professionals about how we can learn from CX, maybe build onto an existing CX team or borrow a lot of the practices and the methods that they use and kind of create some design operations that we can apply UX to and not focus on just marketing, but focus on experience improvement in general. Yeah, I'll kind of touch on I have identified 3 core competencies, and there is kind of a path through those that I talk about in my course. By the way, this is not the first iteration of this framework and model with anything, right? You start with something and you continue to iterate. My focus was really to kind of come up with something that was simple and would make journey managers or UX professionals feel like this was approachable and achievable. So I really have boiled down a lot of the things that I've learned, excuse me, other teams doing and all the necessary things that you have to do to manage a journey into these 3 core competencies. The first one and the most important one where I always recommend teams start is establishing their insights capability. So of course we're, in UX, we're also looking at insights and analytics and looking at numbers and trying to interpret them and improve them. It's way more important at the journey level to have access to insights to make sense of the broad context that we're trying to understand and optimize. So I always start recommending by build your insights program. The way I think about this is identifying the various type of data and insights that you're going to need kind of coming to you in a passive way, set up access and reporting to things like traditional voice of customer data. That's something we're borrowing from CX. We want that qualitative insight coming from our customers' point of view. Also, of course, we're going to be borrowing those perception metrics like NPS and customer satisfaction scores. We want that prong of this program as well. And then what I think is the most important is more of the behavioral, we call them descriptive metrics. Looking at your journey and finding all the little things that you can measure that are indicative of value transfer. So I put all those things together. I kind of tell them in my class, I say, we're going to build a casserole. we're making a mix, a pot of all of these things, and we're going to watch them change and move kind of like an organism until we understand how they affect each other. And all of those insights and data together is what helps you evaluate the quality of your journey and identify opportunities. So it really starts with insights, then design. And like I said earlier, a lot of the design work is really similar to what we do at the product level to improve experiences. The big difference at the journey level is we don't have those design operations. We have this cross-functional context where we need to be collaborating with other areas of the business, other product teams. So my focus with that is really about how do you build that process and build that structure and align around it and set up some formal way that you plan to work with each other. Part of that, as well as finding how you prioritize the work and the opportunities that you do identify. And then lastly, the last competency is orchestration. And this is really for more mature teams. I say this in my course. This is something that you may get to a year or two from now. Start by focusing on insights and design. And then once you've established some maturity, then you might start thinking about, okay, how do we use customer data, behavioral data to start predicting what customers may need at any point in the time of the journey and bring that next best experience to them and be more proactive with a personalized approach, a more contextual journey unfolding for people. So those are the three things I focus on, but really, you know, that's the nuts and bolts. There's more to it. There's things like culture change management, training. There's these other supporting things that I touch on briefly in the course, but the course is really focused on what are the core things that we need to do to actually execute journey management. Well, there's a lot of reasons. From the research, from the data that's out there that's finally kind of coming out about the return on investment around journey design, it's starting to become really clear that if you invest in that journey level experience, it's going to pay dividends. It's going to bring business value. There's a lot of reports coming out within the last year or two that show correlation between high customer satisfaction, investment in journey level design, and also business outcomes like revenue, loyalty, even stock values and things like that. So we know, even compared to UX at the product level, if we invest in journeys, we see more business value than we see if we're just kind of doing UX at just the individual product level. So there's the business value reason. And also that's how people consume experiences now. One thing I say in my class is that, you know, 100 years ago, when we were creating cars on an assembly line, the way that people consumed products and services was very targeted. They would buy a product or they would have a service experience in person and then walk away. But now with everything being on people's phones and we're connected to so many devices and those things are all connected to the internet, experiences and even products, you buy something, it always has an app, right? They're way more immersive than they've ever been before. So the journey, that connection between all those little experiences is so much more important. We have to look at that. And defining it in that larger scope, that journey scope, helps us to see how, you know, one problem here in our back end where we're not sharing data between databases is affecting the experience over here. So by illustrating it with that lens of the journey, it shows the connections between all the moving pieces and it helps people understand why we need to invest in this. I mean, I don't have any very targeted case studies where a specific company, you know, invested X amount and saw X output. I don't have access to that yet. I would love to. But what I have been using, and I present this in my course too, because this is always the first question that everyone has is like, how do I know that doing this is worthwhile? How do I convince our executives and leadership that this is important? There's a couple ways that I look at this. First of all, Forrester, every year they put out their customer experience index. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yes. They do this large sample survey across various industries, regions, and countries to measure people's satisfaction with real brands. And then they post that every year and they rate each brand with a number, and it shows how they've changed from last year to this year. And I show that and I say, the reason I'm showing this is not because I'm saying you need to find yourself on this index to know how well you're doing. The reason I show it is because we want to look at the trends over time, right? They've been putting this index out for years. And so now we have enough data where we can say, okay, we're watching the airline industry, for example, and we know that JetBlue is putting all this money in customer journey management and CX, and their customer satisfaction scores are going up over time. And also look, here's direct correlation to how their business is performing. And that correlation has been shown across all industries and regions, that the companies that are investing in improving the experience are also seeing improvement in all of their top level business metrics as well. So that's just a general way of kind of looking at this at a, 30,000 feet and saying, okay, we're starting to see that this thing is improving across the globe and across industries. It's improving business value and customer experience. Yeah, orchestration is a lofty topic right now. It kind of feels futuristic in some respects. The way I define it is think about it as you are going to use all of the insights that you have about your customers. You could do it at the segment level, like personas or larger segments, down to the individual level, and make sense of the trends and the ways that people behave throughout the journey. Use that knowledge and the data to surreptitiously, behind the scenes, start to think thoughtfully about what might be relevant to this person in this moment. I know where they're going. I know where they've been. I can make a good prediction about what their intent is based on how they've behaved in the last, several weeks. So therefore, I am fairly certain that this white paper would be relevant to them now. So I'm going to, introduce this to their inbox, or this tip or trick or notification. It's about finding ways to bring value that's relevant to that person based on what you know about them and what you know about your larger audience as well. To talk about getting started, you're right, it's multifaceted. In my course, I talk about it as having like 3 levels. The first level is where you might be able to dip your toe into this pool without needing to invest in a lot of tooling or data modeling, work. And that could just mean looking at your journey map and saying, where are there these big opportunities where I can bring value to our personas? So look maybe at the persona level, larger segments, focus first on larger segments and say, if a persona is moving down this path, what would they need in this moment? Is there a way I can inject a more personalized touch point at certain points? And that can be done through general, design work and manual updates to your workflows and backends and such. The second level that I talk about is starting with a little more data and starting to use 1 or 2 pieces of data that you do have access to that can kind of supercharge that effort a little bit, scale it. And then the third level is the real science, sci-fi one that I say, where maybe you do have a really mature integrated data model where you're able to see a single view of customer, where you can literally pull up customer data and see everything that they've done and clicked on and read. And you have tools that have AI that are identifying those opportunities and delivering those pieces of content or those interactions in the moment, in real time, on the right device at the right moment. So the example I share is one that I came across with Uber. So Uber and some of these newer companies, they had the luxury of building their journeys with modern technology and frameworks. So they're a little bit ahead of legacy companies, but we can learn from what they're doing. One example was I took an Uber home from an entertainment district Friday night at 11:30, and they know customer behavior. They know that's a typical use case. Someone's out at a restaurant or having drinks on Friday, going home to their home address. Once I got there, 5 minutes later, I got an email that said midnight munchies. And I thought, that is so smart.
And did you buy something from your release?
I did not, but I thought they're really using, they know the common workflows, the common use cases and journeys, and they also have been able to identify that my behaviors, my last interactions are fitting within that theme. And so they're going to kind of bring to me, they know, a lot of people do order food when they get home in that moment. So that's a great example of that more real-time interaction, personalization, and orchestration. You're right. Like we have the same problem on product teams where there's so much to do and we have to figure out where to focus. Same thing exists at this journey layer. One thing that I've seen work really well, and it kind of falls in line with one of the themes from my research is, well, I think we can probably all relate to this theme, is we know a lot of our leaders understand the value of journey management. They get it. They even want to improve it at a high level. But what tends to happen, in various ways is it's hard. It's hard to figure out how to get there. There's not a lot of guidance to get to a point where we are operating in a journey level way. So what becomes easy in the day-to-day is just to default back to the way we always do things, making decisions based on, things like marketing and the way that we used to make decisions. Really, to do journey management, you have to adopt a new mindset about the way you're going to prioritize things. And you have to be held accountable to acting on that mindset. So the mindset is, we need to make sure that we are considering user needs as part of our equation when we decide what is important for us to be spending our time and resources on. So one way to kind of create that adoption and accountability around that idea is to really formalize as much as you can. So things like create a playbook that has the vision, have executives and leaders, sign this. I've seen case studies where people go around the table and say, we are going to sign this, that this is our strategy moving forward. And it makes people hold each other accountable to say, look, this is the vision and the action plan we put together, and we need to make sure that we're honoring that with the actions and decisions that we're making. A very tangible example of this would be something that I saw Hewlett-Packard do, and I shared this case study with you, Jochem. They put together a decision framework, and I've seen decision frameworks like this before for various use cases, but what they did was they said, okay, any piece of work that comes through for our journey, any opportunity or thing that we see that we need to do, we're going to evaluate it based on this rule set, these criteria. And
let me pull it up, Kim. I have it here.
Yeah.
Pull it up, like everyone can
there
see
you
it
go.
and put some visuals to it. Yeah.
So you'll see there's those two, the blue table and then the purple table below it. these are 2 dimensions by which they are evaluating any opportunity. So for each dimension, they have defined 4 criteria. And this is how they bake in the need to honor customer experience. Is they say, okay, that they've come together to create this framework, and the executives and decision makers are saying, we're going to provide 50% weight to the customer experience improvement. That it has the most weight. See, you see it, the weighting is 50%. And then how much it increases efficiency, how much it impacts financials and speed. And then they kind of do this t-shirt sizing thing for each opportunity to say, okay, this one that we have here, how much does it impact customer experience, high, medium, or low? By doing that, they're able to come up with a score for each of those criteria. You can't see it in here with that overlay, but then a total score for that entire dimension, customer and business impact. And then they've done the same thing for the other dimension, ease and speed. So it's kind of a cost benefit analysis, really, that bakes in the priority that they're trying to honor, that they are going to make decisions based on user need. So the other criteria under the other dimension is feasibility, tech requirements, short-term action, and impact on day-to-day operations. They've weighted the importance of those on the total score. And then once we have a score for each dimension for that opportunity, then you can plot it in this matrix, one of these cost benefit matrices, to see how does it stack up against all the other things that we could be doing too. And the things that have the most impact on your customers bubble to the surface. They should be landing in that priority quadrant. Also, the ones that have the highest feasibility. So that helps you kind of figure out, okay, these are the ones that fit in with the criteria that we've set for ourselves. And if you document and formalize that and hold people accountable for honoring that, that is what I think changes the mindset, changes the tide toward operating in a more user-centered way versus the defaults and the old ways of working. That's what when I saw your demo, that I kind of had that light bulb moment with TheyDo. TheyDo is kind of taking that 2-dimensional matrix and making it 3-dimensional. So now you can look at how that opportunity might impact other journeys and what the overarching impact is. So that, I thought the way that you guys had designed that was really smart. I actually try to stress start small, because this whole practice is overwhelming to take on, because it requires a lot of change, operational change, people change, culture change, the way you work. So my advice always is to kind of simplify it for people and say, hey, maybe you just start with one journey. Pick out whatever journey is the most high value, something that's going to, when you make improvements, is going to capture attention from leaders and executives, and really prioritize that. Maybe if you're in a company where you don't even really have full buy-in and resources dedicated to this, I've seen people create sort of informal working groups where they bring a bunch of people together from across functional groups and have this sort of extracurricular group that has, maybe an approval from an executive to work toward exploring what it might mean to implement journey management, and kind of trying out some beta program around it to show value. It could be something that lightweight early on, but teams that are in a more mature organization where maybe they do have executive that is ready to put money where their mouth is and and hire resources and facilitate change and support a team that's trying to create this new program, then it could be broader. It could, you know, identifying the top 6 to 8 journeys that you want to start with a plan to scale over time. This is a big question. This is one of the biggest questions that we tackle in my course. And you're right, Jochem, it's not a direct answer, just like everything in UX, right? There's always a lot of inputs to consider. A couple things that I would suggest: look at the way your organization is structured. One thing you want to figure out early on is there a CX team? Is there a traditional CX team that already exists that maybe has that brand perception, marketing focus? Where are they aligned in the organization? Where do they report in the structure? Think about where your UX and design resources are situated. Ideally, if there is a centralized design organization, that's good, because that means there's something that you can build upon. If your design and UX people are decentralized and they're aligned to different product teams, we don't really have that central team that we can kind of grow upon. So those are a couple places where you might add these resources: traditional CX team, a design org if it exists and is centralized. Maybe you don't have either of those and you need to kind of establish something brand new somewhere. Either way, it is a big benefit to have these resources aligned as high up in your organizational hierarchy as possible. So that's kind of the benefit that CX teams often have, is that they're usually reporting up to the chief experience officer or somebody in marketing that's high up. So that gives them a really nice vantage point. They have a line of sight into every underlying functional group that they need to facilitate collaboration for this work. Whereas a lot of times design is maybe situated down on the product organization or maybe within technology. So they're lower in the structure. They don't have the overarching influence or line of sight or executive support that CX does. So wherever you put it, think about where you have the opportunity to place it based on how you're structured now, and also try to find executive support and situate yourself as high up as possible. Yeah, I actually was just going to kind of build on what you said. That made me think about, I'm doing a longitudinal study right now with various teams and journey managers, CX people at different organizations, just to learn more about this kind of stuff. There's a company, it's an insurance provider out of Montreal, I believe, in Canada, Sun Life. A gal is participating in my study there, and they've been doing some really interesting things trying to really grow this practice. They've created an experience arm of their business that has both their CX and their UX people in it together. So they're two sides of this branch of their business, which I think, you know, from all the research that I've done and the idea that we need to start joining forces and sharing our skills and coming together to really tackle journey management between CX and UX, it makes a lot of sense to associate those two groups together and give them access to each other. And that's been working really well for them at Sun Life. They're still defining it. Yeah, they're still defining it. Of course, they're about a year in and they're still trying to figure out how this is working, but their vision is to have the people that are dedicated to the journey doing the data gathering around the overarching journey performance and having those prioritization conversations, large strategy vision of, future state. And they then tap into the resources on the UX side. Say we have a particular project or initiative that we need more thinking on from a design perspective. And we also need people to start, after we do the ideation and the design thinking, start to implement and coordinate those changes that might happen across products and services. So they create sort of like I call them squads. Sometimes I call them, now I'm going to lose the name of it, but these sort of short-term project teams, essentially, where they've cherry-picked UX designers, journey managers, engineers, product managers, and they put them on these teams to go through the design process and implement that. So they're leading it from the top level, but UX is an active participant, and they're expected to, do their product level stuff, but then be available to pull up and focus on something that's a priority for those journey level resources. I hate to say, you really have to have some leadership behind this to pull it off. We talked a lot in the class about ways that you can kind of try to create more of a grassroots bottom-up movement, but the reality is to do this, there's some pretty big operational changes that need to be made to really be effective. What I see a lot is people come to me in this course and a lot of times they walk away and say, well, we're going to kind of give it a try by having our UX people sort of dabble in this for a while. And by all means, that makes sense, but you're not going to see any real value come from that. So to be able to hire dedicated resources, maybe make adjustments to the way people are aligned and reporting up the structure, get the money and resources to do the work and support the decisions that the team is making. All of that is really dependent on somebody in some executive position that's pushing this and encouraging it and standing by it.
Yeah. And yeah, that is, I think, the nature of the business, but that's where you get started, right? I'm sure you also have like a vision for what the end state of the org chart is, if we're going to be journey centric, and if we have an organization that is run through the lens of journeys, like, do we still have design, CX, and UX being part of design, and then we have the product org? Or do you think we're going to go and see, just as product management basically evolved over the last 2 decades to be their own almost vertical in the organization, do you think like journey management will have the same, or do you have a different idea of what the ultimate org chart or the way the organization will function looks like?
I'm not quite sure yet. This is what I'm researching right now, actually trying to figure out these different models, these different structures that teams are using, what's really working. And I'm seeing people trying to tackle this middle journey layer of experience design in different ways. So I'm curious to see. I think just like anything else, there'll be a couple flavors of good. And there's probably going to be, certain situational nuances that impact what makes sense for your organization.
Yeah, and if you had to pick one, where do you think it will go, or what would be your favorite setup from where we stand today? There will be tons of iterations coming.
Yeah.
And journey management is in its early innings, but where do we go from here? Where do you want it to be at, let's say, 10 years from now?
What I see that I like, that what I've been seeing lately that I think is promising and interesting is, you know, first of all, some teams are approaching this where they have a dedicated group of resources, multifunctional resources to one really large, important journey in the organization. There's always one really important journey, right? So they'll have a journey manager / owner, and they'll have their data analysts and insights people and their service design and UX people and their content writers, and those people come together to form a team to sort of own, just like a product owner might own the journey. And I think that's a obvious way to approach and attack this problem. Another thing that I'm seeing, and I believe it's again Sun Life that is doing this, they have a pool of journey owners that own like 4 or 5 related journeys in a related space, and they're kind of serving as the traffic controller more so than really somebody who's executing anything day to day. So they're kind of running the vision and keeping tabs on multiple journeys and kind of facilitating other resources across other teams to execute on some of the things, which I think kind of scales it in a interesting way. So I'm going to watch this team, see what this looks like, but that's something promising that seems interesting to me.
Nah, that sounds amazing. We should have them on the show one day to hear how they're doing and how they're actually crafting the craft of journey management.
But beyond that, just structurally, I'm super energized by the fact that I'm starting to see conversations like this happening. Even 4 years ago, when I began to research this, it was very hard to find literature or case studies or anything that's focused on journey management from this point of view, rather than traditional CX point of view. So I'm just excited to see so many people on this call and people talking about it. I would love to see more of that, because I think sharing, blogging, writing articles about what you've tried, what's working, that helps the whole community. And I think we're going to have to come together and have conversations like this and share case studies to help each other grow. So I would love to see that continue to happen. So those of you who aren't familiar with Nielsen Norman Group, we've been around for over 25 years now, teaching UX. Interface design is where we started. Of course, we're broadening. We teach a lot of methodology and practice courses, how to do UX. And we, of course, transitioned to full-time virtual training. We used to do in person before the pandemic. Now we do about 1 conference a month, where this course is probably offered most of the time. Some of them are half-day format, where you'll take the first half one day and the second half the other day, which is nice. Some of them are full-day 8-hour format, and you can log onto our website, go to our training and conferences, and look at the next events and see if this course is on the schedule.